The Illawarra, Shoalhaven, Eurobodalla and Sapphire Coast regions are all located to the south of Sydney. There are epic locations up and down this 400-kilometre stretch of New South Wales, and no matter where you go, you'll find cool stuff to photograph. But as someone who's visited most of it, camera in hand, from Sydney all the way down to Eden, I reckon some of these locations are definitely better than others. And if you're planning on visiting my backyard with your camera and would like to prioritise your time, here's where I reckon you should go. Snaking its way for 665 metres, hugging the dramatic coastline at Coldcliff in the Illawarra, the Seacliff Bridge is a visually epic location close to the industrial city of Wollongong. Adored by the directors of car commercials and landscape photographers alike, there are hundreds of different ways of photographing this bridge and the coastline. It's most frequently photographed from the southern end of the bridge looking north, and this is certainly my pick if you're choosing to shoot from the ground rather than with a drone. This particular location, close to the main train line between Nowra and Sydney, used to be an unofficial scramble up the hillside, and Sydney trains would threaten photographers for trespassing on the land. However, there's now a semi-official Seacliff Bridge lookout track and a parking spot at that northern end, but you'll need to get there early to secure a park. You can also get down onto the rock shelf at both ends of the bridge and photograph from sea level looking up. The bridge lends itself particularly well to aerial photography, either with a drone or in a helicopter with touchdown helicopters on their $300 scenic flight. Drones lend themselves particularly well at this location, enabling you to shoot unique perspectives at any time of the day. It looks particularly good from the northern end looking south. Park at the Coldcliff rock pools and you can easily shoot the entire bridge without having to move. It also lends itself particularly well to sunrise and astrophotography, but even smartphone users can score epic keepers here. The major downside to this bridge is its popularity. It's well and truly on the tourist circuit, and particularly if you visit during the summer holidays, is absolutely rammed with international visitors. I usually hate visiting high traffic locations, but I'm happy to make an exception for the Seacliff. Once upon a time, this used to be a secret spot known only to the locals. In fact, the first time I visited it, nearly 20 years ago, I had to work my way through a whispered chain of 5 different people just to find out where the start of the bloody bush track was. But about 10 years ago, the big local newspaper wrote about it at the height of the Instagram boom, and its status as a secret spot was detonated forevermore. I therefore have no reluctance in sharing the details with you guys. For my money, this is the single best lookout south of Sydney and is an amazing location to photograph at any time of the day and at any time of the year. It's located on the southern edge of the brilliantly named Barren Grounds National Park and is accessed by means of a steep and fairly punishing trail up the edge of Wood Hill Mountain. Depending on how fit you are, it'll take you between 30 minutes to an hour to get to the top, so bear that in mind if you're visiting at sunrise or sunset. The view from the top is a near perfect landscape photography location with brilliant foreground interest and an incredible view looking south over the northern Shoalhaven with views over Jervis Bay and beyond to Pigeon House Didthorn Mountain. Do be aware that low cloud often descends on the escarpment here and completely obscures the view, so check the cloud-based forecast before visiting. You can fly a drone here when the restricted airspace isn't active, but honestly, you're better off with a camera or smartphone. If you can get to the top for sunrise, you're often rewarded with a spectacular view of mist pouring down the mountainside. Wedding photographers, automotive advertising companies, and influencers absolutely love Bombo Quarry. But do not let that put you off visiting this otherworldly location. They started to quarry the blue metal here at the turn of the 20th century, but it was abandoned by the 1970s and then rediscovered first by rock climbers and later on by landscape photographers. The rock structures here are really unlike anything you'll find anywhere on the whole east coast, and they make for epic foregrounds for sunrise, storm, and astrophotography. It can be a busy location, particularly during the big tourist seasons, but if you rock up for sunrise, it's mostly other landscape photographers who usually respect each other's sight lines. You can fly a drone here, but it's not a huge benefit because the best compositions are definitely down at ground level using the myriad abandoned boulders and towers of rock to frame your shots. Park at the Bombo Beach car park and follow the path north around the headland before turning right onto a bush track that leads you round into the rear of the quarry. There's two large gullies in the rocks at either end of the quarry that make for great compositions, or you can climb up onto the rocks at the southern end and shoot across the water as the waves crash onto the rock towers. If you're going early, bring a head torch because the slippery rocks are bloody treacherous. And whenever you go, for pity's sake, pack the mozzie spray because they'll eat you alive. The Southern Highlands have something of a monopoly on waterfalls, with three main and hundreds of smaller falls, all focused within a relatively condensed area. The pick of the crop, as far as I'm concerned, is not the more famous Fitzroy or Belmore, but Carrington Falls. Unlike the other falls, you can get as close as you dare to the edge at Carrington, and you can also get in front of and round the side of the falls too. This is a popular wild swimming spot in the summer, and I'd probably steer well clear during the summer holidays, particularly if the weather's been good. There's a cracking sunset shot to be had here, and it's also brilliant for drones because you can fly up and high and get a great symmetrical photo. The other reason I nominated Carrington is that it's a 2-for-1 deal, since the picturesque Nelly's Glen Cascades are only a few hundred metres from the main falls. This is definitely the sort of place you should try and visit outside the tourist seasons when the number of visitors will be much lower. Pack the super wide, the medium telly, and the drone. About halfway between Jervis Bay and Bateman's Bay is a much quieter part of the south coast, and there you'll find the Murrumarang National Park. For my money, this is one of the loveliest parks in the state, and there are heaps of photo opportunities at the many secluded beaches that stretch between Borley and Depot beaches. The best shot of all can be found by following the track north out of the Pretty Beach car park and up to Snapper Point Lookout. There's a truly stunning vista here looking south towards the headland of Depot Beach, with the flanks of Durras Mountain taking the bush all the way down to the beach. This is one of those spots that works well at any time of the day, but it looks particularly stunning when the sun's shining and you can see the pristine turquoise waters lapping at a string of rugged beaches. Parking at Pretty Beach costs $8 for the day, but if you plan on visiting a few parks, then get the multi-parks pass, which is just $65 for the year and gets you into everything except Kosciuszko. I've flown my drone here on many occasions and I never fail to come away with stunning shots, so I can heartily recommend it for that too. Between Newcastle to the north of Sydney and Bateman's Bay in the south, the geology is pretty much the same, but things change for the better at Durras. The rocks of the Sydney Basin end quite decisively at Myrtle Beach, where there's a sudden transition from sandstone to far older Ordovician rocks. Why do I mention this? Well, simply because south of Bateman's Bay, the coastal rock structures are a bloody sight more interesting than those to the north. And one of the best examples of that can be found at Glasshouse Rocks. Getting down onto the beach to photograph Glasshouse has led more than one photographer on a wild goose chase, so allow me to spare you from any embarrassment. You need to park up at Naruma Cemetery and then head south around the edge of the gravestones to an unofficial path leading off into the bush. Hop over the fence there and then follow this path down, and after a few minutes you'll end up on Naruma Beach. The Glasshouse Rocks themselves are at the southern end of the beach. Far and away the best time to visit here is sunrise. If you get a colourful sky or a clear view of the rising sun, you can score some epic shots. I have flown my drone at this location and got some good shots, but the best imagery is definitely down at ground level, where you can use the dramatic rocks as foreground and main subject. My final pick is a location that represents something of a pilgrimage for landscape photographers, a couple of coastal rock structures that draw photographers from all around the world. I'm talking, of course, about Horsehead and Camel Rocks, both of which are located just to the north of the beautiful coastal township of Bermagui. You can park at Camel Rock Beach car park, but expect this tiny car park to be full if you visit during the warm summer months. Camel Rock is the easiest of the two rock structures to photograph here, literally just a short walk from the car park, but it's also second best. Horsehead is far better. To photograph Horsehead, you need to pick your way over the extremely jagged rocks past Camel Rock. Depending on the tide and the swell, this can sometimes be impossible, so check the weather and tide times before visiting. Once you get round the rocks, it's then just 200 metres up the rocky foreshore to Horsehead itself. Like all the best locations, there's literally no bad time to photograph Horsehead. It works in all weathers and at all times of day, although obviously sunrise is best here. If the tide and weather stop you from shooting at beach level, then there's an almost as good vantage point on a little bush track on the cliffs above Horsehead. And as far as I know, I was the first person to photograph Horsehead with a drone from the ocean side about 8 years ago. And in doing so, I discovered that it's far and away the best perspective for this amazing rock structure. Photographing above the ocean, looking back to the land, Horsehead looks literally like a horse drinking water. The first time I saw it from this perspective, I was blown away by how cool it looked. So if you have a drone, I'd definitely bring it along to this location, although you should of course try and photograph it from ground level too. And that's my heavenly 7 locations south of Sydney for landscape photographers. This was a tough selection to pick, because pretty much everywhere along this 400-kilometre stretch of coastline is photogenic. And while I might get it in the neck for leaving out some amazing locations, I also know that a lot of local photographers like to keep their favourite spots on the down low, if you know what I mean. Please drop me a like on this video if you found it useful, and subscribe to my channel for more photo, video and drone content from yours truly. Until the next time, guys. Ta-ta.